My boss's arrogant son fired me right on the morning of my wedding day. He looked me dead in the eye, handed me a termination letter, and sneered, "Consider it my wedding gift to you." He thought he was completely destroying my life and ruining my future just to assert his new corporate power, but it turned out to be the most expensive mistake he would ever make. Less than 10 minutes after he forced me out, his billionaire father, the actual CEO of the conglomerate, called my phone in a state of absolute breathing panic. My toxic boss's son had no idea who I really was to his father, the massive client contract that was entirely under my personal name, or the secret identity I had been keeping hidden in that office for 3 long years. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my voice has reached. Because what happened when the CEO personally stormed into that office left his arrogant son completely ruined. My name is Vanessa. I'm 30 years old, and for the past 3 years, I've been the invisible backbone of one of the largest logistics firms in the city. As the lead operations manager, my daily life revolved around managing multi-million-dollar supply chains, streamlining corporate budgets, and resolving high-stakes crises before they ever reached the executive floor. I worked quietly behind the scenes, often staying late into the night, to keep the business running with absolute flawless perfection. The legendary CEO and founder of the conglomerate, Mr. Sterling, deeply respected my work. He was a self-made billionaire who built his empire strictly on merit, and he always treated me like an invaluable partner rather than a replaceable employee. However, the entire corporate culture shifted a few months ago when Mr. Sterling stepped back due to minor health issues and appointed his spoiled, arrogant son Julian as our new regional director. Julian was a man who had never worked a hard day in his life. He measured human value strictly by expensive designer suits, country club memberships, and inherited titles. From the moment he walked into the headquarters, Julian hated me. He resented the fact that his father valued my operational insights far more than his shallow Ivy League theories. He was desperately looking for any excuse to push me out and replace me with one of his elite, wealthy friends. The tension finally reached its absolute peak right around the time of my long-awaited wedding day. I had requested a brief 2-week leave to marry the love of my life and go on our honeymoon. I worked double shifts for weeks prior to ensure everything was perfectly aligned for my absence. But Julian saw my happy milestone as the perfect window to strike. Bland on the morning of my wedding day, the air was crisp and my heart was racing with excitement. Before heading to the venue to put on my bridal gown, I decided to stop by the corporate headquarters for just 10 minutes. I wanted to drop off a critical operations file on the main desk to ensure our field drivers wouldn't face any delays while I was away on my honeymoon. I walked through the glass doors, holding the folder, expecting a quick and quiet exit. Instead, the moment I stepped into the main lobby, Julian intercepted me. He was standing there with a smug, arrogant smirk plastered across his face, flanked by 2 of his recently hired high society friends. He didn't offer a greeting or a word of congratulations on my marriage. Instead, he pulled a crisp white envelope from his tailored suit pocket and held it out toward me. I frowned, taking the envelope and pulling out the document inside. It was an official corporate termination slip stating that my position as lead operations manager had been entirely eliminated, effective immediately. I looked up, completely stunned, my mind struggling to process the sheer malice of the timing. "Julian, what is this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the shock. I've kept this entire department profitable for 3 years. Julian took a slow step closer, his eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction as he delivered the ultimate insult. "Let's be realistic, Vanessa. Your services are no longer required. I'm restructuring this division with elite talent, not low-class administrators. Consider it my personal wedding gift to you. Now you have all the free time in the world to be a housewife." He chuckled mockingly. assuming I was completely powerless against his inherited authority. I refused to give Julian the satisfaction of seeing me break down or beg for my job. I calmly placed the termination letter back in the envelope, looked him dead in the eye with a cold expression, and walked out of the corporate building without saying a single word. I stepped into my car, took a deep breath to shake off the sheer malice of his actions, and started the engine to head toward the wedding venue. Not even 10 minutes later, as I was driving down the main avenue, my phone began ringing violently on the dashboard. I glanced down and saw the caller ID flashing. It was Mr. Sterling, the billionaire CEO and Julian's father. I pressed the Bluetooth button to answer, expecting a standard call to wish me well on my wedding day. Instead, the line opened with a sound I had never heard from the powerful billionaire before. He was in a state of absolute, breathing panic, his voice trembling over the speaker. "Vanessa, thank goodness you answered, mister," Sterling gasped out, completely out of breath. "I need you to listen to me very carefully. The international tech conglomerate we've been negotiating with for the past year is finalizing the multi-million-dollar buyout right now. It's 40% of our entire annual corporate revenue. But their legal team just sent over the final paperwork, and they have inserted a non-negotiable clause. The entire deal is explicitly tied to you. They state that the contract is only valid if you remain the sole director of operations for the next 5 years. They don't trust anyone else with their supply chains. Where are you right now? I need you to sign this document immediately." A cold, deliberate smile spread across my face as I gripped the steering wheel. Pulling over to the side of the road, "Happiest here." "Mr. Sterling," I replied smoothly, keeping my voice entirely calm. "I am currently driving to my wedding venue, and I'm afraid I cannot sign that contract. Your son, Julian, just intercepted me in the main lobby less than 10 minutes ago. He handed me an official termination slip, told me my position was eliminated, and said I should consider my firing a wedding gift. He made it very clear that I am no longer part of this company." The line went completely dead silent for 3 agonizing seconds before Mr. Sterling let out a roar of absolute fury that rattled my car speakers. "He did what?" The billionaire screamed, his blood pressure visibly skyrocketing. "I am heading to the office right now!" "Do not go anywhere, Vanessa." Meanwhile, back at the corporate headquarters, Julian was completely oblivious to the financial storm heading his way. He had gathered his elite friends inside the executive boardroom, pouring expensive glasses of scotch to celebrate his sudden power move. He was actively bragging about how he had finally cleared out the low-class, dead weight from the corporate roster to make room for their own private circle. But his arrogant celebration was instantly cut short. The heavy projector screen on the wall suddenly flashed bright red as an automated corporate alert echoed through the room. The multi-million-dollar buyout deal had just been frozen by the international buyers. Within seconds, the company's public shares began tumbling into a terrifying, uncontrollable freefall, erasing millions of dollars in corporate valuation in a matter of moments. Julian's face turned completely pale as his phone began ringing off the hook. "Bonda, instead of letting Julian's toxic stunt ruin the most important milestone of my life, I decided to use it to my absolute advantage. I arrived at the venue, stepped into my breathtaking, high-end designer bridal gown, and had my hair styled flawlessly. But before walking down the aisle, I looked at my fiancé, explained the chaotic corporate situation, and smiled. He agreed instantly. We hopped back into our vehicle and drove straight back to the corporate headquarters, determined to witness the fallout of Julian's arrogance firsthand. I pushed open the heavy glass doors of the main building, walking into the bustling lobby, looking like an absolute vision in my pure white wedding dress. The entire office staff froze in absolute shock, their jaws dropping as the woman they thought had just been not jot to skirt, fired in total defeat, marched gracefully toward the executive elevator. I bypassed the security desks and walked directly into the main boardroom, where Julian and his high society friends were frantically yelling into their phones, trying to stop the bleeding of our collapsing stock prices. The moment Julian's eyes locked onto my bridal gown, his face twisted into pure, unadulterated rage. "What the hell is this, Vanessa?" Julian hissed, slamming his hands onto the mahogany table. "Are you insane? You don't belong here anymore. Security, get this ridiculous woman out of my boardroom right now." But before the security guards could even take a single step forward, the heavy double doors of the boardroom burst open with a violent crash. Mr. Sterling himself stormed into the room, his face turning a dangerous shade of crimson as his chest heaved with pure fury. He pointed a trembling finger directly at his son and bellowed across the silent room, "Don't you dare touch her!" "Everyone sit down and shut up right now," Mr. Sterling's explosive entry left the entire room paralyzed in absolute terror. Julian stepped back, his voice cracking as he tried to defend his actions. "Dad, listen to me. I was just protecting our corporate image. She is just a low-class manager. I already found an elite replacement who fits our social circle." "Shut your mouth, absolute fool," Mr. Sterling roared, slamming his leather briefcase onto the table with enough force to rattle the glass light fixtures above. The billionaire turned to the executive board, his voice carrying an intense weight of absolute authority. "Vanessa isn't just an employee of this firm. 3 years ago, when we upgraded our global distribution network, it was Vanessa who privately developed and patented the core data routing operating system our entire shipping fleet relies on. She didn't just manage operations, she owns the intellectual property that keeps this multi-million-dollar conglomerate alive." Julian's eyes widened in sheer unadulterated horror as the truth finally crashed down on him. The international buyers weren't investing in his family's name. They were investing entirely in Vanessa's proprietary tech infrastructure. Mr. Sterling glared back at his pale, sweating son. "Because of your pathetic, arrogant little wedding gift, our stock is down 15% and the buyout is dead. Drop to your knees right now. Julian. Look her in the eye and beg Vanessa for her forgiveness, or I swear I will strip you of every single share and asset you own by sunset." The boardroom was dead silent as the arrogant regional director slowly slid out of his chair, dropping to his knees on the carpet before me in total humiliation. I stood over him in my white bridal gown, looking down with a cold, liberating sense of justice. "Don't bother, Julian," I said calmly, turning directly to Mr. Sterling as I handed back my access badge. "I'm officially pulling my software licenses. Consider it my wedding gift to myself. The corporate retribution was absolute." Mr. Sterling immediately stripped Julian of his inheritance, fired him from the family enterprise, and initiated a massive internal audit that left his arrogant son facing immense personal liability for corporate negligence. Julian lost his tailored suits, his country club status, and his high society friends overnight. Meanwhile, I walked out of that boardroom, married the love of my life, and used my proprietary software patents to launch my own independent operations firm. Mr. Sterling's international buyers immediately bypassed the family conglomerate to sign a direct, multi-million-dollar partnership with my new company instead. Julian wanted to use his inherited power to destroy my future, but in the end, his own toxic arrogance completely ruined him. Now, I'm curious about you who listen to my story. What would you do if your boss's son tried to fire you on your wedding day? Would you have gone back to confront him in your bridal gown or handled it through your lawyers?